Kelly 268, Serco's Churchill Toyshop, Rothschild Conair triggers, Kennedy Pan Am bombs. Which Kennedy do you think I'm talking about?
Honestly, I wasn't listening because I'm doing some technological stuff, but it says that you're 5 by 5, so everyone can hear you loud and clear. So go ahead and ask me the question and expose my ignorance.
No, I'm sure you know.
Well,
the connection...
Sure if you're sure I know, is it Serco?
No, the Kennedy that I'm talking about is the guy that was blown up in that BQ-8 that you described so vividly some time ago.
Yeah, and that's about the only thing I've ever figured out. I mean, honestly, I figured that out. I don't think anybody else in the world, was aware of that in the last 2 generations. But anyway, go ahead and ask me the question, and I'll get it right this time.
Well, the heading was, let me just say it again, Kennedy Pan Am bombs, and I think there's a connection between the bombing that killed Kennedy and the bombing that killed the passengers on Pan Am 103.
Yes, I agree, and also there's other remotely triggered explosions, and I know that you said it was on 129.55 or some discrete frequency. So, yeah, I'm aware of what you're saying, and you're wondering which country did it or which company did it?
Well, I think it's the Rothschild and Serco that did it.
Oh, I thought I said Serco.
Yeah, you did.
Oh, okay, so I got the question right.
Yeah.
Okay, well, go ahead. You do the smart stuff. I'm tired. Go ahead. And it's just because I, traveled last night.
Oh, and I'm saying hello to Denise. Everything good there?
Yeah, I think so. She's got earplugs in because she's listening.
Okay. All right. Dear General Kelly, please accept brief 268 from Field McConnell, United States Marine Corps whistleblower and Global Operations Director of Abel Danger, wherein he and his research team at Abel Danger plan to launch a series of crowd-funded class action lawsuits on behalf of plaintiffs and injured communities where victims have died as a result of the negligent, reckless, willful or fraudulent use of patented devices, including radio, IFF, precision navigation and bomb and trigger technologies transferred by agents of the late Winston Churchill's Toyshop, a British weapons R&D organization of World War II, into the custody of Serco, formerly RCA GB 1929 shareholders, and investment bankers served by the London and New York City offices of N M Rothschild and Sons Ltd. So where I'm coming from today, Field, I think is there's a thread that connects the collision of the Titanic with the iceberg, the murder of Kennedy, the Pan Am 103 crash in 1988, and the development of a global, how shall I call it, prisoner transportation and prisoner and alien transportation system by your sister. Now, your sister didn't, of course, develop it. She needed access to a great deal of money and a great deal of technology. So when she called you in December 1988 and asked how to handle a potential mutiny of prisoners on the Conair planes, I think when you gave her that little bit of advice about droning the plane,
yep,
she went back to a very sophisticated criminal organization that stretches back to the jamming of the signal that would have warned the captain of the Titanic that he was on course to hit an iceberg. So that's 1912. Your sister's conversation with you was 1988. I think it was December, is that right?
Yes, it was December of '88.
And the technology and the advice you gave her, I think, sharpened the cutting edge of this criminal organization run by Serco and its investment bankers, Rothschild, N M Rothschild, to the point they were able to deploy either directly owned or leased aircraft on 911 that would have taken out the prime targets on 911. So I'm still reeling because, for example, I went back to look at the Marconi Telegraph patent dated 1901, and Serco has reassigned it.
Okay.
Now, I don't know in law whether you're legitimately allowed to do that. I mean, I know that the Marconi route company passed through various owners, but it's now ended up with BAE, British Aerospace.
So you said BAE displaced Serco or Marconi or whoever the previous was?
Yeah, the inventor was Guglielmo Marconi. I'm probably not pronouncing that very well.
Yeah.
But that was back in 1901, and he filed and was granted a patent. Now, I didn't know you could use the term original assignee when you're talking about British Aerospace, because British Aerospace didn't exist. But on the patent registered presumably with Serco at the United States Patent and Trademark Office, it shows that patent, the Marconi patent, as the original assignee being British Aerospace. Okay. So I'm thinking, how on earth is this happening? That is to say, there are British companies that seem to be hoovering up, and American companies, that hoovering up exclusive access to patents that can actually be weaponized. Then I started looking at that story about the Pan Am 103 switching frequency after flying over a beacon, a radio beacon.
Yeah.
And so I went looking for radio beacons and patents, and I found out that some people argue that the greatest contribution of the Ford Motor Company to aircraft was the invention of a radio beacon. So it would appear to have been quite feasible. I think the beacon was invented by Ford in 1928. That is to say, you have an opportunity through the radio beacon to trigger the bomb on the Kennedy plane. Can you just outline why the BQ-8 was used in this mode, Phil? Do you remember?
I don't know why they picked that aircraft, but and I'm thinking back now to 1944, and it was either the 12th, I never can remember, it was either the 12th or the 20th of August of 44. I'm going to guess it was, and I'm guessing, I'm 100% sure it was one of those dates, but I'll just suggest that it was the 12th of August of 1944. The second of the World War II drone bombers succeeded in getting airborne with only two people, a pilot and a co-pilot, because it was going to be a drone as soon as they got up to the cruise altitude. And the guy in the left seat was Joe Kennedy Jr., and that struck me as odd because Joe Kennedy Jr. was in fact a pilot who was qualified to fly the, I will never remember the name of that plane, but the Navy had a single tail version of the Liberator, and they called it a privateer, and that's what he flew in the Navy. But why they would take a Navy pilot and stick him in an Air Force B-24, they look the same. Somebody in the chat room is going to put up a picture of a B-24, which has two vertical stabilizers, or two tails, and somebody else is going to put in a picture of a consolidated privateer, which has one vertical stabilizer. It's taller, but it's probably got the same or close to the same number of square feet, or however they, whatever nomenclature they have for measuring the control surface area of a single-tail privateer or a double-tailed B-24 Liberator. Here's the situation. When the aircraft got the cruise altitude, they set the autopilot, and then once the autopilot was set to take the 21,600 pounds of Torpax, T-O-R-P-A-X, over to the launch point in France, where they launched German buzz bombs. Once they established that the aircraft could track its way over there, then the pilot and the co-pilot were supposed to bail out, and it doesn't really matter through which opening they were going to bail out, but I believe it was the cockpit windows. Kennedy on the left would jump out the left window, and the other guy on the right would jump out the right window. And to signal that they were just about ready to jump, they had a radio transmission to make. And every time I talk about this and that doesn't mean that I'm correct, but the idea I am correct. If they would say 1, 2, 3 of anything, and I always say that they 1 potato, 2 potato, 3 potato. When the chase plane, which was an RAF Mosquito, was behind Kennedy's Consolidated Liberator, called a BQ-8. Well, when they said 1 potato, 2 potato, 3 potato, then the chase plane, which I don't know if it was flown by FDR's son, but he was in the aircraft, and his name was Elliot, I think, Rockefeller, and here's what I believe had to have happened. They go 1 potato, 2 potato, and then he makes a transmission which which triggers an electronic spark, if you will, and that's when the 21,600 pounds of TORPAX, Torpax, detonated, blowing the aircraft, any ordnance on the aircraft, and those 2 humans to very small little pieces of whatever that would flutter down to the ground in the English countryside. Now, how that's not been discovered by anybody other than us in the last 72 years is beyond me. Way back then in 1944, probably nobody knew what had happened with the exception of the perpetrators. But it seems to me that like many other things, are being discovered. So with the advent of the internet, I believe that we can solve crimes that haven't been solved, like in this case, for 72 years. And the beauty of it is, I'm quite certain, is nobody can prove us wrong. What do you think about that statement? Nobody can prove us wrong.
Well, yeah, totally, Field, and I congratulate you on your memory, because I took the step of actually putting up the article about this, and I think you said 21,600 pounds. You were slightly out. According to this article, it's 21,170 pounds, but I think I can forgive you for that, right?
Well, I think you can forgive the other party, because when was that article written? The one you just quoted?
I don't know. I think I got it from the internet. You know, the story of the Kennedy life.
Okay. Yeah. Well, while you're doing the smart stuff, I'll go see if I can find that article. By the way, I see that Eager Beaver put up a picture of a B-24 in a left-hand turn. It's a black and white picture, and the number on the nose is 191. And there's another B-24 from Braveheart. And let's see, then we got the Privateer from Karen S. And you can see it's much the same aircraft, but it has a single tail instead of the 2 tails. And why they would do that is beyond me. But it's nice to see all this support from people when we ask politely for photo evidence to confirm what it is we're stating. You know, people are very happy, it appears, to participate, and there's a whole lot of pictures. Eager Beaver put up a picture of a Mosquito, which is a 2-engine reconnaissance bomber photography aircraft, and that was following the BQ-8. And I don't want to change the theme of this show, so you go ahead and carry on, and I'm going to bring up something here in a minute, and I'm writing myself a note so I won't forget.
Okay, thanks, Phil. So just to read out those details, but it basically confirms what you said. AD believes that Serco, then RCA GB 1929, provided patented radio links through derivatives of the Ford Motor Company's radio beacon, US 1937876A. Now that was patented, or the filed, or the priority date, in 1928, January, February, March, April, in May, 2nd of May. So 1928 to 1944, that means, 16 years. So the patent is still viable. And even if it isn't, I think what they do is they adjust the patent and it goes submarine, if you will. Mm-hmm. So they can still, sorry?
No, I just said yes.
Yeah. So they've got plenty of time to think about how to adjust that patent. And I think it's going into a submarine patent pool. That means these are patents that are filed but not published. Okay. Because you don't want your enemy to find out about it. But the problem for America, because Serco now runs the American Patent Office, is the investment banker for Serco is N M Rothschild and Sons, who also happens to be the investment bank for Queen Elizabeth II and your president, Donald Trump. Now that gives, I suggest, N M Rothschild the access to a top secret patent pool of devices that are being used outside the intent and the wishes of the assignee. So here's the fraud, and that's why I've called it, the Rothschild Conair triggers, or Conair Rothschild triggers. I think Rothschild has created, through people like your sister, whether she's naive or corrupt, I'm still not quite sure about, but they've created an international SWAT team that can fly on Conair leased or modified aircraft anywhere in the world, where they can pick up a SWAT team from a jail, for example, fly them to a crime scene, they can do the dirty deed, and they can be back in jail for dinner with a nearly perfect alibi. So Rothschild has the ability to turn on events or turn off events and stand down law enforcement and security through its monopoly access to various communication systems. And we've got a thread, I think it's unique to Abel Danger, we've got a thread that connects the murder of Kennedy, Joseph Patrick Kennedy Jr., on August the 12th, 1944, with the Titanic being jammed. The communications to the Titanic, which could have listened to, I think, the California giving it a warning about the ice, the telegraph operator told the California telegraph operator, stay away, shut up, I'm dealing or working with Cape Race. Do you know who owned the Cape Race signal station, Field, back in 1912?
I'm thinking, Cape Race, was that on the European side of the ocean or on the Canadian side?
Nova Scotia.
Excuse
Canada.
me?
Nova Scotia, Canada.
Oh. Well, would it not be Serco or the predecessor?
No, it was Lloyd's of London.
That's what I meant to say. When I said Serco or the predecessor, I clearly intended to say Lloyd's of London, which is an insurance corporation. And during our most recent radio show, I think today's Tuesday. We were supposed to do this on Monday, but I was flying. On the Thursday show, I stated my opinion, and see, it doesn't matter if I'm accurate or not. But I said there's only 3 viable industries in the United Kingdom, and I mentioned that your aircraft and automotive and train building and shipbuilding and other heavy industries have gone away for a variety of reasons. And I said the only thing left is FIT, fear, insurance, and tourism. And they do cause a lot of fear around the world, and you just made a strong case that they've been doing insurance and therefore having the ability to manipulate the insurance industry since 1912. But feel free to disagree with me. Go ahead.
No, I do agree, and in fact I think it goes back much further than that, because Lloyd's of London was formed in 1688, Phil.
Okay.
And White's Gambling Club was formed in 1692, and White's Gambling Club, I don't know when the first reference to people's deaths were, but I believe they were involved in death pool betting on the time that someone would die or the date that someone would die for, 16, 17, 18, 19, over 300 years,
okay.
Which is incredible. Because when you think about it, all these people have to do is get prior access to information of an accident or a multiple casualty event contrived by human beings, and adjust their insurance policies and literally and figuratively make a killing. I think that's fair enough, don't you?
Yeah, and I think it's an interesting choice of words, make a killing, because it's the killing that makes the financial killing. Right.
So let me just talk, I got in today's post, AD believes that the Lloyd's Cape Race signal station operators in Halifax, Nova Scotia, who would later help set up Marconi Wireless Telegraph Company of America, the Radio Corporation of America, RCA, and RCA GB 1929, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of Radio Corporation of America, and RCA GB 1929 subsequently became Serco after an initial public offering structured by N M Rothschild. I think these operators at Cape Race, they left the Titanic on course to hit an iceberg in the early hours of 15th of April 1912 by jamming an ice warning from the California with Guglielmo's Marconi's apparatus for wireless telegraphy that is dated 1901-06-11, so that's the 11th of July of June, US 676332A, which patent has allegedly been fraudulently reassigned by Serco operators of the United States Patent and Trademark Office to BAE Systems Electronics Ltd. Now, I don't know about you, Phil, I think it's stunning. This thread, it's a thread about which there can be no debate. Either these patents were used or were not used at these crime scenes. It is either true or false. You know, we can lapse into good and evil and guilty or innocent, but the beauty for Abel Danger, I think, is staring us in the face. And I want to put a hat tip to, if that's the right word, to Tim in Tokyo, because he did some outstanding analysis of the crash of the Titanic into the iceberg that alerted me to this strong possibility that they were actually jammed. So it wasn't that they were given false signals. The warning that was being transmitted by the California would have been also available to Lloyd's of London in the Cape Race signal station. So Lloyd's knew that the California had transmitted an all stations alert, right, of an ice pack directly on the course of the Titanic, and they distracted or diverted the attention of the wireless telegraph operator on the Titanic, so he was unable to receive that warning. And my guess is, again, let them prove it wrong, that signal that the Titanic was about to crash into the iceberg was sent to Lloyd's of London, and in real time they adjusted the insurance policy for the Titanic. Does that sound plausible? Over to you.
Yeah, it sounds plausible. It also sounds like the modus operandi they've displayed in other events, not the least of which was 9/11, because they adjusted the insurance on World Trade 1 and 2. Somebody in the chat room will know, but it was either measured in 1 or more weeks or 1 or more months, but it was close to the event that they insured against a simultaneous destruction of both World Trade towers. And of course, I think any naive person that's a clear thinker would think, well, the odds of that happening are about zero, which they would be if it wasn't done on purpose by the senior executive service, Serco, the Crown agents, and the Vatican Jesuits. That's my opinion.
Right. Now, the insurance syndicate that insured the Twin Towers, Willis Faber, was the same insurance syndicate that insured the Titanic. And the Twin Towers insurance was adjusted so it became a double incurrence with the possibility of a double payoff if both buildings came down in the same day. So these scumbags, they strayed into what is known as the realm of catastrophe bond insurance by floating a bond where there was a sponsor of the bond who was perhaps afraid of being cleaned out if such an event happened. So they would be asking to set up a bond with maybe $150 million, let's say. So if the catastrophe didn't happen, they would transfer $150 million to the investors, and that was the carrot for the gullible, unwitting, unthinking investors. Because if you go to the investment community and say 2 steel-framed buildings with 200,000 tons of structural steel in each are going to come down on the same day, and we're afraid of the risk, so would you pop in $6.4 billion? So I think there are many institutional investors, right, who'd say, well, I mean, no steel frame building has ever collapsed through fire. So they pop in, I don't know, $6.4 billion. So you've got the sponsor sitting on one side ready to move $150 million if the catastrophe doesn't happen. And you've got some big fat pension funds and insurance companies and banks with $6.4 billion at play if both towers come down. So actually, of course, what happened is they blew the buildings up, but I'll come to that in a minute. So I've just put in this third paragraph of today's post. Abel Danger believes that Serco, then RCA GB 1929, provided the Imperial Japanese Navy with RCA's resonant cavity magnetron. That's US 234-898-6A, priority 1940-10-24. I'm going to come back to that date and time in a moment. And devices for identification, friend or foe, and precision navigation in the Pearl Harbor attack of December the 7th, 1941. Now, in late 1940, there was a mission called the Tizard mission that Churchill sent out to the United States because the situation in the UK was that the production facilities were being bombed to hell by the Germans. And whilst they had a lot of very powerful ideas, one of them being the cavity magnetron, they didn't have the production facilities. They desperately needed to do a deal with the Americans. Now, it turned out this was a deal with the devil. And very interesting, because what Henry Tizard brought was a trunk full of papers about all the most secret advances being made in technology by the British during the early part of World War I, and one example of the cavity magnetron. Now, the cavity magnetron was invented at Birmingham University under the supervision of Victor Rothschild, who was, I believe, Churchill's principal scientific advisor on what kind of weaponry were needed to win the war. And he actually took a cavity magnetron away from the office or research lab of the professor, whose name I forget, who was developing it, and he sent it back to him in a couple of days later, telling him to be a little more careful with his security. Now, the problem is many people believe that Victor Rothschild was the fifth man, and that he sent all the details of the cavity magnetron to the Russians. But I've got a suggestion for you, Phil. I think he also sent it via Lord Arthur Sempill to the Imperial Japanese Navy, so that they could put cavity magnetrons on their aircraft for the Pearl Harbor attack of December the 7th, 1941. What dropped my jaw a week or so ago was when I saw who was the assignee for the resonant cavity magnetron brought by the British to America. It turns out it was RCA, and RCA was run in 1940 by a man called David Sarnoff. And David Sarnoff was on the Telegraph communicating with the Titanic when it sank in 1912. And David Sarnoff apparently had a friend in Canada who was a brilliant telegraph operator, even though he was only 16 years old at the time. And that man was called William Stevenson, who's had a book about him called The Man Called Intrepid. And William Stevenson became Churchill's spymaster in New York, presumably cozying up to the Rothschilds Bank in New York, the Rockefellers, etc., etc. So I think we're going to have to, and I think Abel Danger is maybe the only organization can do it, is to recalibrate the events ranging from the Titanic in 1912 to 9/11 in the context of an operation by N M Rothschild for the international transport of prisoners and aliens, of which your sister was a cog in the wheel. Now, what you can do with these prisoners and aliens, you can assemble pools of talent like your sister did at ADX Florence, where she had Timothy McVeigh and Ramsey Youssef and Ted Kaczynski in adjacent cells. That, for me, Field, is a university of criminality, not terror, because these scumbags, I don't think they terrify you, I don't think they terrify me, but they terrify a lot of people because they don't get recognized by the people or their aides or allies to give a proper defense. How do you think?
Well, I'm going to test your memory now. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Who took over when Intrepid died?
That's an interesting question. Can I guess at that? Because I don't know who did.
Okay, but I think we have expressed it before verbally, but go ahead and take a guess.
I think Oliver Buck Revell took over from the man called Intrepid.
Okay, well, previously we've suggested my sister, but if Oliver Buck Revell and my sister are working together, it really doesn't matter which one of the two did it.
You're absolutely right. And then we have to look at Oliver Buck Revell, because in 1988, just after you'd had that conversation with your sister about droning aircraft, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oliver Buck Revell took his son and daughter-in-law off the tarmac before they got on Pan Am 103.
Yeah, as if he had a little foreknowledge.
Right. And what I don't think I knew, but maybe a few days ago, going back into the work Tim did, is I discovered that there was a frequency change, and you as a pilot would know that. When you go from one zone to another, you flip the frequency to another frequency. Is that right?
Yes, but you don't do it on your own volition. There's two ways it's generally done. One is let's say you're going from London and you're going to head to New York City, and you're going to be controlled by London Control. They're going to hand you off to various London Control operators at specific geographic points along your way, and the way it might happen is climbing out of a certain altitude. Departure control from Heathrow would say, contact London Control now on 131.50, and so the pilot would say, switching now to London Control on 131.50. Good day. Then you change in the radio control head. You put 131.50 in, and then when it's quiet on the radio, so you're not blocking anyone else, you would say something like this: London Control, this is Abel Danger flight 911. We're crossing 15 degrees west, and we're level at flight level 310. And then that London Control guy would keep you for somewhere between 60 and 300 miles, and neither of those are arbitrary numbers I pulled out of thin air. But that controller would be following you as you go from 15 west to perhaps 30 west, and that means 30 west longitude. And then when you get to 30 west, they would it would go like this: Abel Danger 911, contact Iceland radio now on 133.35. And the pilot or the co-pilot, somebody would say, London Control, Roger, Abel Danger 911 is switching to Iceland. Good day. And then you'd go, Iceland radio, this is Abel Danger 911, we're level at flight level 310, crossing 30 degrees west. And that person would say, Roger, Abel Danger 911, stay with me, and at 40 degrees west, we will hand you over to the Canadian controller, and I'm going to have to think of who that was. It's not goose or gander. There is another name for it, and it's related to a geographic point in the Canadian Maritimes, somewhere inland. But anyway, typically you will be directed by one controller to contact the next one, but they can sometimes do it over at a beacon. And I've had a question about what you mean by beacon, but there's pretty much only two possibilities. One form of a beacon is on the ground. Actually, there's ADF stations, there are VOR stations, there are TACAN stations, but also there's a beacon in the aircraft. That's called a transponder, and that sometimes is called a beacon. So it's not clear to me which type of a beacon you're referring to, but generally a radio control frequency switch will be initiated by the ground controller unless he or she controlling you from the ground has lost communications with you, in which case they would ask other aircraft in the vicinity of you, and I'll just say how it happens. This is if they lost control with Abel Danger 911, this is what everybody that was still within radio range of the previous controller would hear. This is London radio. We've lost control with Abel Danger 911. Are there any other flights in the vicinity of 15 West that have heard Abel Danger 911? And generally, you know, 1, 2, or 3 people would have heard a transmission from the aircraft that no longer has contact with London radio. And so somebody like, it could be something like this. Air Canada 503 heard a transmission from Abel Danger 911 3 minutes ago, and he said he had lost contact and asked all of us on the frequency to see if we could get a frequency for him to switch to, in which case London would say, thank you very much, Air Canada 511, please broadcast that he should contact Iceland Radio on 133.5. And so there's a system, and everybody's helpful, and most people aren't paying attention on purpose, but even if you're sitting there reading a magazine or doing a Sudoku, if you hear any type of a lost communication event taking place, people just sort of start paying attention more in hopes that they could help put the aircraft back in contact with some controller. But you can actually go all the way across the ocean never talking to anybody if you have to, because you know where you're supposed to go, longitude, latitude, and you know what your altitude is supposed to be, and you know what your Mach number. Mach number is a percentage of the speed of sound, and typically going across the North Atlantic, when I did it for a long time, we'd be operating somewhere around Mach 0.82. That means everybody has to be going Mach 0.82. Otherwise, your separation nose to tail, you know, gets all goofed up. If let's say that I was going 0.84 and the airplane behind me, excuse me. No, the other way around. The aircraft ahead of me, instead of going 0.82, he's going 0.79, and here I come and I'm going 0.84 instead of 0.82. It's going to create a situation where the aircraft could appear to be in a position where they're going to collide, which isn't going to happen anymore. There's a system called TCAS, which stands for Terminal Collision Avoidance System, and it's on all the time. And when there are TCAS-equipped aircraft with functioning TCAS, and if it's not functioning, you're not going to take off. It's unsafe. But the TCAS is a device that searches a long way out in front of you and a short way behind you, and a middle-sized dimension left and right. And if it looks like there's an aircraft out there that's going to penetrate the safe perimeter of airspace around any of the participating aircraft, it'll advise you, and then it'll warn you, and then it will direct you. It'll advise you there's traffic that's now entering your sphere of influence, and that advice would be upgraded to a warning if it's getting more likely that you're going to be in a position to collide. And then it's going to go, and the color codes are green, yellow, red. Then it's going to go to direction. It's going to say, and once again I'll use the same flights, if Canada 511 and Abel Danger 911, if their TCASs detect each other, the TCASs, using artificial intelligence, will direct both aircraft. It'll order you to do it. It might be something like if the Air Canada flight's at 320 and the Abel Danger flight's at 310, if they detect that there's not adequate vertical separation and you're on a collision course, in sufficient time to deconflict the aircraft, the TCASs in both aircraft will simultaneously direct safety information. It may say Air Canada. It doesn't talk. It uses lights and symbology, but in effect, what the symbology is going to direct you to do, and it's a scope where you have green, yellow, and red. It would take the aircraft that's going to be a little bit too close, that's on top, and it would direct you with symbology and an oral warning that would say something like this: Air Canada 511, climb now. And there would be a red arrow that is pointing up, telling you as the pilot that you are being directed to climb now to avoid a collision. And it would take the other party, which was Abel Danger 911, and say, Abel Danger 911, descend now. And when you're clear of conflict, both of those arrows, the red arrows, one saying climb and one saying descend, they would both change to green to say that mathematically the solution was effective and you're no longer in danger, at which point, by policy and by procedure, both aircraft would return to their assigned altitude. So it's all really quite simple, it's really quite safe, and that's why I feel like every time that there's an airliner event or a military event, the odds are very high. I'd say it's highly likely that the safe operation of aircraft is being compromised for money or for murder. How's that for an explanation?
You know what, Field, as I was listening to you, I felt I was reminded, maybe I'm overreacting, but Churchill's speech when he said this was their finest hour.
Mm-hmm.
This hour may be our finest, because what you've done with your incredible deep knowledge of how these things, the how of what these things are doing, and the knowledge that we've developed, or I've developed with the what, of how they can stitch these patterns together. I mean, it's a complete timeline from the sinking of the Titanic to 911, or am I being naive?
No, I think you're right. I agree with you, and that's why I don't think, and this would sound brazen or arrogant to a few people, especially if they're new. I don't think there's any courtroom that wants to see me in their court, especially if they have a gold fringe flag, because I would make reference to that in the answer to the very first question. For instance, if a judge in a gold fringe flag would say, Mr. McConnell, what's your opinion on the root cause of 9/11? I'd say, I'm going to plead the fifth because I don't want to make a single statement if I'm in a courtroom with a gold fringe flag. Now, at that point, any judge would be dumber than a box of rocks to continue down that road by saying, well, why don't you want to talk with a gold fringe flag? If he asked that question, at that point the game's over. Because he either doesn't know what a gold fringe flag means, or he does know, and he wants to proceed forcing you to participate in a legal or lawful exchange when you're actually in occupied territory. Now, that's difficult for some people to understand. Now, why did I bring that up? I'll tell you exactly why I brought it up. I'm going to ask you a really tough question, David. Do you know what day it is, month and day?
It's the 8th of the 5th month.
Yes. Some people say it's May 8th or 8 May. On the 25th of May, let me see if that adds up. 25th, that adds up. On the 25th of May, I'm being subpoenaed, apparently, to be in a federal courtroom somewhere in the New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Vermont triangle. And I'm going to be there on aviation safety related truth. And I'm going to go out right now on the 8th of May, and I'm going to suggest to everybody listening that that subpoena will be vacated. But if the judge, and I know the judge's name, but I'm not going to express it because that would lead some to believe that we've communicated. We've never communicated. But I know that a subpoena request for me to be in that courtroom exists. My guess is I won't be allowed into the courtroom because sometime between then and now, the judge and his fellow judges that talk during their coffee breaks would say, do we really want this uncontrollable person in our courtroom? And I think out of self-preservation and cowardice, they'd probably say, no, let's not accept this subpoena request. But if they do, David, as you know, if I get subpoenaed, and I'll still be here in the UK with Denise at that point, well, I would fly on Delta from London to the Boston airport or the closest international airport that serves any portion of New Hampshire or Vermont. But the answer to that question, that closest airport would be New York Kennedy. but there's other places. But anyway, I think that the resolution of a lot of these terrible abuses of the United States of America by whoever, doesn't matter whoever, whoever doesn't matter, but if anybody is abusing the Republic of the United States and the citizens, and I hate that word because it's got a negative context. If you're a citizen, that's not a good thing. That means you're a player in their game. But most citizens don't know that they're playing that evil game. But it'll be interesting to see in a couple of weeks if I show up in that courtroom, because if I do, I probably shouldn't say exactly what I'd be trying to do. Well, first and foremost, I'd be trying to ensure that justice is served in an egregious abuse of a fellow pilot that's taken multiple oaths. But, you know, when young 17, 18, 19, 21-year-old kids swear to uphold the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, I would say close to 100% of them know what they're saying. And I'm guessing maybe 15 to 20% when the poop hits the fan, they'll be aware of the dangers, but they'll face it head on. And they say, I don't care what you do to me. I don't care what you threaten to do to me. I took an oath 3 or 4 times, and I haven't violated them yet. And so if you invite me into your courtroom, you're going to have your hands full. Over to you, David.
Yeah, and just to connect, you'd asked me that question, who I thought took over from Intrepid or William Stevenson, who was a telegraph operator, a 16-year-old telegraph operator when the Titanic messaging from California was jammed, and maybe he'd involved. But to connect Oliver Buck Revell and your sister, here goes with this paragraph. Abel Danger believes Serco agents hired Oliver Buck Revell, former FBI Executive Assistant Director, Investigations SES6. And I found a reference that he was appointed to senior executive service in 1978. So I'm a bit puzzled about that because I thought it was only formed in 1979. To work with the UK's National Crime Squad, NCS, to set up witnesses to the 911 and MH body count hacks where Facebook or fakebook patsies and pedophiles are blackmailed with derivatives of the United States Air Force autonomous face recognition machine and manipulated with Kinetic North America's social engineering protection appliance to eliminate physical truth, actus reus, from crime scene investigations. So what they can do purely robotically using artificial intelligence is they can look at semantic, that means words, or non-semantic, meaning images, being generated by people like yourself or myself or Abel Danger or Jason Goodman, and determine or prejudge that those emanations, if that's the right way of describing the field, are malicious or criminal. And they can literally filter out the truth from the crime scene investigation. Now that is sinister beyond belief. This is 1984, where the Ministry of Truth is anything but. And again, you know, Kinetic is a British company. But the point is, this requires an active participation between American and British partners and others to a lesser extent around the world. And the rot, I think, set in the 1920s when this guy, David Sarnoff, was allowed to steal the Marconi telegraph patents. So we've got a thread of a conspiracy that I think fits J. Edgar Hoover's comments about the individual being handicapped by coming face to face with a conspiracy so monstrous he cannot believe it exists. I believe and I accept the challenge that Abel Danger is perhaps the only organization in the world that can help people see, recognize, and dismantle that conspiracy. Over to you, Phil.
Okay, I'm just enjoying going through the chat room. I'm looking at all these pictures. There's a, oh, somebody just put up a picture. J.J. Jono of Jersey put up a picture of this Marine. He's a former Marine. He starred in one, what is that? Full Metal Jacket. And apparently this, yeah, this ad is from Full Metal Jacket. And the guy's name I think his name was R. Lee something, and I believe he died 2 weeks ago or less. Maybe it's R. Lee Emery. But I should stop looking at the chat room because it distracts me. In fact, the last two pictures, oh, this is odd. Let's take a 30-second break from what we were talking about. Braveheart just put up two pictures of, Braveheart's not going to believe this, I don't know about other people. He's put up a picture, the second picture he put up, the lower one, is a gray F4 flying over a body of water. And the tail number is 640956. And a couple frames above it, there's 640976. Denise, did you just hear what I just said? I said that these airplanes, 640956 and 640976, this is what some Christians would say is affirmation that we're on the right track. And in this case, the affirmation is the fellow who put the pictures up, Braveheart, did not know, I don't think, that in William Tell 1978 we had 4 primary crews and 4 airplanes. So on the primary crew airplane, the crews, let's say it was Bob in the front and Steve in the back, their names would be on the canopy rails. But they had a 5th airplane, which is a maintenance spare, so if one of the 4 primary airplanes couldn't go, the crew of the downed aircraft would quickly go jump in the aircraft, the reserve aircraft. Long story short, I'm going to put up a picture as soon as I find it. There's a picture out there, and many of you Abel Danger people have seen it, of 2 camouflaged F4s in a hangar in Fargo, North Dakota. And this seems so trivial to most of you, but my name was on the aircraft 976, which is the gray one, and my name was also on the aircraft 956 because I wasn't well liked by the chain of command. They liked my skill set, but they didn't like how I operated. But the enlisted people that took care of the aircraft, the crew chief of 976 was Gary Sturr, S-T-U-H-R, and he really appreciated the way I interacted and respected enlisted men. And the crew chiefs, by the way, the aircraft were selected by maintenance control, and the crew chiefs could only vote on the paint job of one airplane. That's the spare. Well, the crew chiefs of all 4 primary airplanes decided they wanted my name on the spare, and so I know that sounds egotistical. I don't mean it that way, honestly. I just, out of the 40 F4s we had, the 2 that had my name on it in October of 1978 have just been put up. The odds of that are, I think the odds, David, you're fairly good at math, I think. I think the way I figure out the odds would be 40 times 39. Does that sound right if you want to know the odds of those 2 airplanes? Out of 40 tail numbers, yeah. What are the, go ahead.
Well, no, 40 times 39 would give you the combinatorial odds, I think.
That's what I meant to say. Hmm. I don't know what you said. I just like to say that's what I meant. Yeah. But I'm going to go, while you take over and do some smart stuff, I'm going to go find the picture of these 2 aircraft 40 years ago. In 1978, the 2 aircraft that Braveheart just put up, they were in a hangar, and I don't know how I ever came to get that photograph, but I think I can find it. So if you give me 2 minutes, I'm going to go try to find that photograph, unless somebody's already posted it, which I would doubt.
Okay, thanks, Phil. So I said that this may be our finest hour because what we've done is we've stayed focused on the what and the how, and we can leave smarter people than us, or better informed people us, to determine the who and the why. You see, and going back to this idea of the community, for example, the community in the vicinity of the Pentagon on the morning of 9/11, there'll be people there who knew exactly the identity of the group that was walking line abreast on the Pentagon lawn, picking up evidence, which is a felony, right? The people who put them there will know the motive of why they put them there, because what they were doing, of course, was they were removing evidence of what it was that hit the Pentagon, leaving us, or we the people, to speculate. So I think what we've done almost uniquely in our shows, we've focused on the what and the how, and the last paragraph of today's post is, with this, the 268th Kelly public briefing, we believe we can help the Trump administration to strip Serco, Conair, and the senior executive service out of any contracts with the United States, especially the alleged mass destruction contracts with the United States Patent Office, FAA contract towers, and the Visa and Ammunition Center, and help you, that is General Kelly, complete the job which you started as Secretary of Homeland Security to defend America against all enemies, domestic and foreign. So really, I think it's very simple. Serco, Conair, and the senior executive service, get them out of any contracts with the United States, prosecute where appropriate, but essentially go after these people under a wrongful death suit, because they are responsible, directly or indirectly, during the 20th century, I would guess, for multiple millions of deaths. But we can pick the high points. For example, Pan Am 103. There's two different cases there. There's a class action suit on behalf of the passengers, and there's a different class action suit on behalf of the 11 people who were killed on the ground. How does that grab you? Over to you.
Well, it grabs me as an interesting project, and I don't know, I mean, nobody knows, and most people wouldn't guess how long it would take to pursue that. I'm working my way through a photo archive right now, hoping that I can find the picture that will prove what I just stated about those two airplanes side by side in a hangar with my name on both of them. Now, that's not really important, but there's this allegedly fictitious Operation Gumball that's going to take place at some point. There's 4 Abel Danger people that are meeting at the Goff Manor House on this Friday. And they're people that Denise and I have met on numerous occasions, and a lot of people would say, well, what good does that accomplish? And the good that accomplishes is when I announce it well in advance that this is going to take place, and then we actually get it done, we have photographic proof that we did what we said we were going to do. In fact, it's very interesting. I didn't do this on purpose. I'm looking through this archive, and I'm going to put it in the chat room right now, because this is a photograph from a previous gathering of Abel Danger people at the Goff Manor House, and I could not have controlled this, my seeing it right now at this time, but I did see it, and so it's going to be uploading right now. And the way that my brain works, not that it's right or not that it's average, but by creating these fictitious operations, and by the way, Operation Gumball was inspired by a conversation I had about a week ago with the Telford Russian, who is neither a Russian nor does he live in Telford. But it's character I made the weekend that Denise and I met each other. I came up with this character, and as life would have it, we had a guy show up with a name that's very close. There's the picture. Under the little girl holding her hands on her hips, staring down 4 Marines. Under that little girl, there's a picture in a restaurant of me on the left, Denise, somebody that we called Bucky Badger. It's not him. Somebody that I don't want to grace with a mention of his name. Then the next person is Vanishing Point, and the last lady is Agent Afterburner. So let's just see if Vanishing Point's, he's not here. Afterburner, I can almost guarantee you would not be here. She's working pretty hard. So anyway, I went looking for one photo and I found something different, but I think it's got to confuse the intelligence agencies when I claim that we're going to be at a specific spot on a specific day, and in this case, under Operation Gumball, 4 of us from Abel Danger are going to arrive at the Goff Manor House in Crawley, UK at 12:45, and then we'll go inside and sit down for lunch at 1300. And I think I've mentioned in writing that there were going to be a couple of other people sitting at the next table. That's got to confuse, I feel very confident that confuses people who are trying to follow me. Hey, Braveheart, how did you get that photo? Jack Mac got it. Boy, I'd like to know how you got that. But see, this is not significant necessarily from a military standpoint or a criminal standpoint. But those two F4s side by side are 956 and 976, and my name, it says Captain McConnell, I think. Let me just see. It might say Captain F. McConnell. And this stuff doesn't matter, except for what this demonstrates is, yeah, I blew it up and I can see it says Captain McConnell on the front of both and Captain Harrington on the rear. And Harrington and I are completely, well, he was a back seater and I was a front seater, but our personalities, I guess you'd probably know without me telling you that our personalities would not have been close, because one half of that pair has got a personality that's sort of out there. Unfortunately for Harrington, who's a very good guy, he died maybe 5 years ago at about age 63, and he had no vices. He was a very kind man. He never boasted, he never bragged, he never used colorful language. He didn't have any, I don't know if he ever had a single beer in his life, but he's just a very solid American, and he was very professional during flying competitions, and I'm sure he used to curse his luck when he, on 2 different occasions, he and I flew, and Willie Tell 78 was one of those occasions, but we did work very well together. I don't care about the military stuff. I don't care about the flying. I don't care about me or Harrington. The point to take away from this conversation is 40 years ago, God knew what we'd be doing today. And God knew that if this photo could be found, and 2 different guys, Braveheart and Jack Mac, found it, it shows that the plans for the world have been established long, long ago. And that's for the second time in this exchange, David, or this show. I'll say it was 1944 when Joe Kennedy was murdered. And from August of 1944 until about 2 years ago, nobody knew how it was done. Now, I'm going to do something I can achieve. I can Google my name, Joe Kennedy, BQ8, and mosquito, and I will find out how many years ago it really was that I came to discover that. Braveheart just put up a picture of a KC-10 and 3 F4s. They were on their way up to Alaska out of Fargo, and I had the pleasure of flying both of those types. I flew the DC-10. This is a tanker model. It's called a KC-10, but same difference. And I was lucky to fly those F4s. I wonder if this is Braveheart again. Yep, it is. There's another one that just popped up, Aircraft 72. That would be 640972. And that aircraft is the one that's at the main gate in Fargo, and it's the one that I shot down a drone in April of 1982. Whoop-de-doo. None of this matters. Don't take it as ego. If you want to take it as anything, take it as my expression of how meticulous God is at creating things to happen in a certain way, so at some point somebody will come along and consider the information and come up with a conclusion to what's really going on. That's sort of a vague statement. Here's something that's not vague. On the morning of 9/11, 3 of the 4 E-4Bs were flying, and the call sign of those 3 flying E-4Bs was Vivi 36, Venus 77, Word 31, and Sword 31. Now there's only 3 airplanes, so why did they have 4 call signs? I can tell you. Somebody in the SAC command post, which didn't exist, but it's called Air Combat Command, but its headquarters when it was SAC were at Bellevue, Nebraska at Offutt Air Force Base. So whoever filed the flight plans for those 3 F-4Bs on the morning of 9/11, he knew that there was something terribly wrong, and he didn't want to, well, it could have been a she, so he or she did not want to compromise their career, but he or she wanted to make sure that somebody would come along later on and see Sword 3.1 and Word 3.1, and I might not be the first somebody, but I'm the somebody who made it. I forced that argument into the public domain because in the book of Ephesians it says the sword of truth, which is the word of God. Now, most people, even if they're what people consider born-again Christians, that would go right over the head of the vast majority of the people if they didn't have an aviation background coupled with a fluency in Scripture. So, David, I know that doesn't make sense to a lot of people, but it's just like pattern of the crimes, pattern of the times, pattern of the signs. Once you see it, you recognize it. If you've never seen an affirmation from God before, you may not recognize it, but if you ever do recognize it, you'll see it over and over. And that goes back to what you were saying about the Halifax Cape Grace or whatever it was, and then they directed the collision of the Titanic with the iceberg. The aircraft flying around on 9/11 were all directed by complicit bad people, and MH370, MH17, there were 13 Baker's dozen airliners or airliner types that were destroyed by this evil enterprise. Now it's up to 15. So you got the 4 flights of 9/11 and you got 15 flights since. And what caused it, isn't it funny, we both cleared our throats at the same time. And I want to, just for the record, I want to say I did it first. But what are the odds that all of these airplanes, 19 airplanes, are taken down, and they were done in the same manner as 9/11 and the same manner as the Titanic, and so they're going back to the plan book, but yet not changing the plan. They establish patterns which are clearly visible to those of us that are watching, like you and I. So I think that when I made those side discussions about these airplanes, it's just an affirmation from God that we're on the right track. Over to you, David.
Yeah, and I think, and I have to go, Phil, but I think now, like I said, I think this has been an outstanding show, one of our best. We've stayed with actus reus, the facts of the case. You've, I think, indicated, and I don't disagree with you, that God must be favoring us because we're committed to the truth at the crime scene, and evil we'll discover later, and justice will be done. But I'm very happy, Phil, so I got to bow out now and talk to you Thursday, I guess.
Yeah, that's fine. Let me just ensure that's correct with Denise. Thursday's going to work, right? Yeah, we'll be here, David, and I'll start working on the Thursday radio show either later tonight or early tomorrow. If anybody has anything they want put in the show, like an image or content. Oh, before you go, I'll say it as quickly as I can. That's why I'm talking faster. I saw something yesterday that that leads credence to the possibility that 9/11 is going to be opened. And what that was Admiral Mike Rogers has retreated from his previous position, and it is thought that that's going to accelerate a review of 9/11 and 3/11, whatever 3/11 is, I don't know. But I found that to be very good. And there was something real big else that happened. Do you remember, Denise, what I said happened yesterday that was good news? I've forgotten right now. It'll come back to me. But David, I think, nobody can figure out Trump if he's, do you remember at all?
It was length of terms, was that? Congress.
Oh, yes. Denise remembers. There's some talk now that Trump's pushing for term limits, and term limits are something that should have been here 40 or 50 years ago. But you go with a clean conscience, and we'll see you at the same time on Thursday, okay?
Okay. Bye, Denise. Bye, Phil.
Yep.
Bye, all.
Bye, all. Bye-bye. There, he's gone. So let's see what we have here in the chat room. By the way, I had to speak quick. Let's see. Fukushima. Okay. Well, yeah, well, I'm going to try to calm down here. I was really tired when we started. I'm not now. I saw an F4 with an external cannon in the 70s. Well, I'll tell you, just for entertainment, and just to show you how good Jack Mack is and how good Braveheart is, there's a picture out there of a Kansas F4, and I believe it has 5 external cannons. It could only have 3, but it's got a centerline cannon and either 1 or 2 on each wing. So before we say goodnight, let's just all go see if we can find that picture. I'm going to find it, and you can stay in the chat room. If they find it before me, I'll come back and say something. But it's quite a picture. Doo-dee-doo. For the other people that are racing to find the picture with me, Braveheart and Jack Mack, what I put in my search window is Kansas, F4, and external gun pods. Let's see if anything comes up. I hope it does. It's just an incredible picture. It didn't come up quick. Oh, yes, it did. Yeah, it came up first. Did anybody beat me, Denise? No, don't worry, but if had Braveheart or Jack Mack posted a picture. Let me just see what they got. Yep, that's it. Braveheart got it. That's Braveheart, thank you. You beat me fair and square, but I'm going to put my picture up too, just to show you, a very unique photograph. F4, 5 guns. I don't think, I don't know everything, but I don't think that an F4 ever flew with more than one center, then it would be on the center line. But I've fired external guns, but I've never heard of having more than, well, now wait, I'll stop short because, no, I won't stop short. I'm looking at a picture of an external gun that's close to a sidewinder, but that well could be on the center line too. So this is not important to anybody. It's just sort of interesting. I'll post my picture there. We can close this show out if everyone's agreeable to that. F4. Ooh-dee-doo. I'll tell you what, I'm not going to do it. I did find one, and I'm sure other people found it too. Is there anything that we're supposed to do now? George is not home, right? Okay. Well, then I'd like to ask the prayer team. That's 4 people plus myself, but I don't do any of the selecting. But a lady in West Florida, and Denise, and Braveheart, and Gobsmack, if any of you 4 think of a prayer that would be useful, let me know. And I would encourage people, if anyone wants to see the picture I saw, if you put in Kansas F4 plus external gun pods, it's the first picture that comes up. It's in the top row, upper left-hand corner, and it's got 5 gun pods. It only looks like 4 because the 5th gun pod's on the center line behind the nose gear. So most gun pods on F4, C, and Ds were on the center line. I'm going back to the chat room, I hope. Doo-dee-doo-dee-doo. Yes, I am going back to the chat room. Braveheart, thank you. That aircraft 451 or 461 does indeed have 5 guns on it, which that would be an awesome display of firepower, especially if they worked. Oh, deep state. Yeah, okay. Karen S. Lovely. It's my opinion, and I could be wrong, but I think this guy is, meaning Admiral Mike Rogers, was playing a key role in the precious metal backing of the U.S. currency. And there are many references to the admiral without saying which admiral. And from where I'm sitting and what I think I know, this is the admiral that was always being referred to. Pray for all innocents being raped and sacrificed. Okay. You don't see anything earlier than that, do you? Okay. Well then, here I go. I'm going to turn around because we're not supposed to pray so people think that the person saying the prayer thinks that he or she is anything more or less important to God than the person's being prayed for. But clearly you can see Braveheart suggested this. So, spontaneously off the top of my head, I would, while I'm praying to God for safety for children, safety from being abused sexually and murdered, so that people, evil people, can either drink their adrenochrome blood or eat their body parts. Cannibalism, murder, this doesn't float with God, but there's a scripture that will make this quite evident. And the scripture is Matthew 18:5 and 6. And it basically tells all of us that if anyone were to harm a child, such as the children that he claims, which would be all of the children of the world, doesn't matter what color, what nation, it doesn't matter what language is spoken, or if they're wealthy or poor, all the children need to be protected. And it says in Matthew 18:6, but if someone were to harm one of these children of mine, it would be better for them if they had tied a giant, or maybe it's bound, but there's different versions. If they had put a giant stone on their leg and gone into the sea, which means die. And I think dying by drowning is not the most pleasant way to go. So dear Heavenly Father, I pray that you will keep a hedge of protection around the children of the whole world, not just of the United States, or not just in the community that I'm in, or the community 100 miles east or west of here. But all these children enter the world because you want them here. And on the converse of that, sometimes when little children die, it could be that you get tired of just getting old people up in heaven all the time, so you want to see some of your prettiest flowers. There's a cliche that says sometimes people pick the prettiest flowers first, and of course that's true. If a woman or a man is in their garden and they see a rose that's formed more perfectly and with a perfect color, they might want to pick that rose and give to someone they care about. But I can't believe in my mind, Lord, that you would want some little children to come to you ahead of schedule. But the truth remains, if they come to you ahead of schedule, and if they are victims of abuse, murder, human trafficking, war, even though you would not want those children to come to you ahead of schedule, it must cheer you up to see precious little souls that have never been, they've never sinned, and they're perfect just the way you made them. And so I pray, Lord, that you don't have to see too many more young flowers being picked. And I would also be very supportive in what I believe to be President Trump's effort to rid organized pedophilia from the world. And I want to thank Braveheart for suggesting this short prayer. It may be inadequate, but I would ask everyone to take a look at Romans, although there is something in Romans that's very important. But Matthew 18:5 and 6, God speaks for himself very well. The Romans thing that popped into my head is Romans 3:23 and Romans 6:23, and that just talks about sinning and points out that everyone's done it. Now, I'll admit I've done it many ways, many times, and making an effort to do it less and less. But if any of you are worried about things that you know that you've done that you regret, I'd encourage you to read Romans 3:23 and then jump to 6:23, and you should feel better about yourself, and that's what God would want, because when you acknowledge your sins to him, he is faithful and just in forgiving your sins, and from that point forward seeing you as a white robe with no red spots. So your sins are forgiven if you pray that he would forgive. I can't forgive them for you, I can tell you how to do it. All you have to do is pray to him and acknowledge your sins and ask him to please show his mercy and grace in forgiving your sins. And then the other half is try not to do it anymore, whatever that sin or transgression was. Once again, Matthew 18:5 and 6. I pray for the children in the precious and blameless and perfect name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Okay, that's it. What else is in the chat room? I hope that, well, I don't hope for anything. I'm just happy to be here, but I'm going to take a look and see if anybody has anything. Oh, I see. I didn't see it when it came up, so I'm going to blow this one off. The first big red button. We'll call for one in a minute. I want to get to the bottom of the chat room, that's all. Oh, there, yeah, that picture you put up, Braveheart, of me in Arlington. My parents are both down there about 5 or 6 feet, and they're in different caskets because they died at different times. Denise, do you see that big wreath? Did I ever tell you who makes those? Yeah, it's amazing. When I went out to see my parents for the first time, oh, this is a great picture of Denise and I from September of last year. We were at the Glyphes house in Crickhowell, Powys, Wales. And I sat there in our hotel room and I thought, you know, I know somebody around here. And his name came to me. It's Mick, M-I-C-K, Wright, W-R-I-G-H-T. And so I went to the front desk and I said, there's a guy named Mick Wright who lives probably within 5 or 10 miles. And they said, oh no, he's a lot closer than that. He's, go to the end of the driveway, you turn left, you take your first right turn, and you'll go into a little village. And if you see anybody, just ask them where Mick Wright's farm is. So Denise and I went, and on his farm is that castle from long ago. I think, do you remember, was it in the 1200s that was built? Yeah, I think so, but the remains of it are on his property. And I see somebody, David, the Telford Russian, but those who so shall offend one of these little ones which believe in me, it would be better for him that a millstone were hanged around his neck and that he was drowned in the depth of the sea. And I thank you, Braveheart, that's great. Braveheart also put up with me, put a picture of Denise and I, and that was at AV8 last year. I'm getting close to the bottom. Oh, okay. Braveheart put this up, but I want to explain something without even reading it. I already know what I want to explain. I'll read the whole thing first. If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn away from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and will heal their land. Okay, for those of you who don't fully understand this, it's if my people, okay, first of all, God has all the people, but there's a qualifier here, who are called by my name. That's Christians. Okay, so if my people who are Christians will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and will heal their land. So what that means, when you take it all together, if just the believers or just the Christians in the United States will pray, the people that are non-Christians, the people that are agnostics, the people that are atheists, the people that are lacking in any spiritual knowledge, those people will all benefit too, because it's only the Christians that need to pray. And I just said a prayer, you know, and not on my own. The idea came from someone else. But if we who call ourselves by his name, and it could be something as simple as believer, this is interesting. And now I'm going to encourage some people who don't think that they're going to be saved. I'm going to prove you wrong right now. But I can't remember the scripture. In Acts, ACTS, it's either Acts 16:31, which I believe it is, or Acts 20:31. Would a male take a look at Acts 16:31 and post it, and would a female put up Acts 20:31? And I'll read the appropriate one. It tells you all you have to do to be saved, and you won't believe how easy it is. Isaiah 40:31, but those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. That's pretty good insurance policy right there. Oh, Denise, I'm happy. You just put up something that I was going to read, and then I saw your name on it. I'll read it.
No, it's the live stream.
It's what?
It's the live stream.
Oh, really? The live stream chat? Someone in the live stream chat put up Psalm 19:14, which says, "Let the words from my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, my strength and my Redeemer." And I see it says from live stream. That's funny. I was not familiar with this 19:14 scripture, but the words of my mouth are in Isaiah 55:11. It says, "So it is with the words of my mouth; they shall not depart from me, and return void without having accomplished the purpose for which I send them." Sometimes when I appear to be getting sort of energized or direct in my communications with those trying to destroy the United States of America, people might think, well, I wonder how he can quote scripture one time and then, 30 seconds later tell these powerful people to go jump in the lake. A little bit more directly than jump in the lake. But the point is that when I speak like that, I'm doing it on purpose because I'm attempting to achieve the effect. And the effect I'm hoping to achieve is putting fear in the hearts of the non-believers. But it's actually a favor to them, because if you can get them to be afraid of their eternal future, you might just turn them towards the truth. And if they turn towards the truth, that's one less that God needs to throw in the lake of fire. I'm going all the way to the bottom. I hope I get there. Oh yeah, okay, Matthew 18:5 and 6. "Whoever receives one child in my name receives me. But whoever causes one of these little ones who believe in me to sin, it would be better for him to have a giant millstone fastened around his neck and be drowned in the depth of the sea." There's the big red button. I will